Hi, this is the December 2021 first virtual reading for December. It's hard to believe it's the end of the year already. I feel maybe it's because of the pandemic. I can't tell one month from another. One's a little more rainy than the others. So today we have three terrific features, and I've reordered them from the order the invitation might have led you to expect. So we're going to begin this morning with Lindsey Royce. Lindsey's poems have appeared in periodicals and anthologies, including Aeolian Harp 7 and 5, Cutthroat, Journal of the Arts, the New York Quarterly, Poet Lore, and Washington Square Review. Her poems, The Sensual Sea and Adagio for Heartstrings, were nominated for Pushcart Prizes in 2019 and 2020, respectively. Her first poetry collection, Bare Hands, was published by Turning Point in September 2016, and her second collection, Play Me a Revolution, was published by Press 53 in September of 2019 and won the Silver Medal for Poetry in the 2020 Independent Publishers Book Awards. Go on and begin your reading, Lindsey.
Thanks, Robbie. Hi, everybody. It's really good to see you, and I'm so happy that you came today. And I want to give a big thanks to Jim Lewis for supporting my work and organizing this reading, and all of you for attending. I'm so grateful. And also to my fellow readers, I'm looking forward to hearing your work live via Zoom. So I'm going to jump in right now. I'm not going to introduce the poems because I timed this and it came out to 9 minutes and 7.5 seconds. And we have 10 minutes. So the first poem is called Two-Stepping to Chemo's Beat. On the pillow, my husband's head sags, and I think of Jesus nodding. John's stomach is as white as David in marble. Sparse black hair rings a feeding tube, J-tube, 2 syllables seared into my naive stupor, denying the extinction of our love. The tumor flares, a fireball or supernova, swallowed by a black hole we are powerless to close. His eyelids fall, sleep heavy, boxing gloves dumped in a ring, and cancer has bleached his sun-ruddy face, grayed his once red blonde brown beard as motley as Jacob's coat. They'll medevac him to Denver, insert a stent, drip chemo slowly into his new chest port, a dock where no Voyager will set sail, where poison will ooze stealthy, a pirate, a gangster, a godsend. Please, please, God thing, heal this pain that stoops him, doubles him like a folding chair. I hate the acceptance in his sweet green eyes that says, maybe I will die, while he scribbles instructions for when I should pull the plug. His bull's strength and stubbornness now futile. No rugged Marine, he's all too human. Gulps down pain, he pukes back up. And I hate how he's thinning to bone, as if he, the chef, filleted himself. His once barrel chest carved down to a mess of clavicle and ribs, reduced to nature's whim, to the gambler's rigged chance, the cards dealt to wild things who don't get mercy, none, as if a God thing with mercy even exists. The Gift Tower. Against science, against the cancer that had spread from his stomach to hip, against mathematics and wisdom. I pled, please God, words that beat relentless as panicked wings. Please help me wrap his packages to correct. I slid scissors down the red plaid's white stripe, tying ribbon into elaborate bows with candy canes, a Leatherman, a mini flashlight, a fish-shaped bottle opener, and practical kitchen gadgets. He was too fatigued to wrap my presents, so I did that too, with black polka dot paper and silver bows, taking special care with the diamond wedding ring to stack with our simple courthouse band. I bundled gifts from our 6 dogs in lime green sealable bags with penguins. He'll be happy, I thought, having presents from the dogs. I spared no expense, prepared a grand Christmas for him. The tower of 28 packages climbing the wood stove pipe, like a creeping vine, making its own colorful tree across the room from the real one. Although he was coming home for hospice, I bought him things to keep him warm for chemo: a winter coat, flannel shirts, driving gloves, wool socks, and things he wanted: a Le Creuset Dutch oven, a set of antique Wagner cast iron skillets, and 3 flavor arrays of Penzi spices so he could cook himself happy. When he returned from the hospital, we celebrated the belated Christmas with his mom, our dogs, and the rest of his family on FaceTime. John smiled, holding each gift up to the camera, except the Dutch oven and iron skillets, which were too heavy already for him to lift. The last cookie for John. I promised myself I wouldn't write more about you or obsess about where in creation you are. And yet I need you to shatter the candlelight in our living room where I lean into your deathbed pillows, my feet on the ottoman, tears scouring my eyes. You haven't magically conjured cooking scents in weeks, your usual spectral love notes. No eggplant parmesan, no rosemary roasted potatoes, no peanut butter cookies ghosting the oven. How we'd screw each other over for the last cookie. And you know, I would give you love, money, an apple a day glistening light through summer leaves. I would give you purple plums, their sweet tart meat. I would raise your brilliant, sorry ass from the dead. But know this, my beloved spar partner, my stubborn king of the right wing, my roadhouse scholar, my honey bun. It should come as no revelation, no wish-fulfilling revelry, that I still wouldn't leave on the plate for your spirit the last damned cookie. This is called Bacon-Wrapped Dates and the Last Word. Stones pock our dirt road to the end of my vision. Their perspective hones to a point as small as your vaccine scar. You were making bacon-wrapped dates for a Thanksgiving party, and I recall wishbones that, like all superstitions, are archived with chuckles from past holidays, where you sliced turkey so gently the meat could have been butter. What sacrifice is in the filigree of a dead geranium's blush, one inhabiting that soon forgotten hovering between life and death? The last inhale, the letting go, the book's last word, cinema's fade to black. I forget what breakfast juice I sipped while you stiffened, your gregarious green eyes waiting to be plucked. This year, I'll try to cook Thanksgiving potluck. Use spices you left behind. Your oregano, your sage. No LSD to lose this holiday to fantasy, this grave anniversary of the beginning of your end. There is nothing uniform about grief, though I'd scissor it into the islands like the Cyclades, their trees, pomegranate and fig, fruit sweet after the bacon-wrapped dates you'd been cooking before you collapsed and the ambulance squared up the drive. Your food was left warm on the counter. How could I know you'd begun to leave this life while you were making side dishes? Who could have suspected your cranberry tart would foreshadow the color of the body bag, zipped slowly over your perfect face? First Christmas without you. I passed the grapes and loaf to no one. Set the teapot between two cups. I tear the heel off your sourdough recipe, dip it into your homemade oil, luminous gold green pool on a white plate. A yeast of sorrow bloats in my throat. Christmas carols shatter the silence. My red sweater, your twinkling lights, the echo of colors on the curve of a glass. I never understood how much I needed you to sustain me. Under the blanket, we lay dying. At the time, I thought it was only you.
Look, it's done.
And I have one more. God is the fish in my mouth. And this is for John. It's to John. It's talking to John. Let me feel your sun warm my throat, illuminating me from inside. What spills from crows' beaks but seeds and trinkets? Earring, dry fly, fishing line, slide through watery mouths. Do I walk away, heart tight as a walnut, or towards, which is really the same direction, the swallows eddy and the cormorant rises, wet with a rainbow in his mouth? Thank you very much. And I have to acknowledge Pam Yushuk, who helped me work on this manuscript. It's ready to go out. It just hasn't gone out yet. And Pam was a wonderful, wonderful editor. So to everyone, I really appreciate your listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsey. That was outstanding. It was a really excellent reading. I'm sorry, now the vacuum cleaner is off and the washing machine is on. I get the message, but there's not much I can do about it at the moment. So I will introduce, before it gets louder, I'll introduce our next reader, who is Lauren. Was it Lauren? Now I can't remember who I put second. Was it you, Jim?
I think it was me.
It's Lauren.
Okay,
It's Lauren.
All right, thanks. Lauren Scharhag. She's an associate editor for Gleam, the Journal of the Cadrelor. And you'll have to, at some point, tell those of us who aren't familiar with the form a little bit more about that. And the author of 13 books, including Requiem for a Robot Dog from Cajun Mutt Press, and Languages First and Last, published by Cyberwit Press. Her work has appeared in over 150 literary venues around the world. Recent honors include the Seamus Burns Creative Writing Prize and multiple Best of Net and Pushcart Prize nominations. She lives in Kansas City, Missouri, and to learn more about her, you can visit her website at www.laurenscharhag.blogspot.com. And I should mention that features, including all of you, can put your information about your books in the chat for people in case they want to order. So go ahead.
Thank you so much, Robbie and Jim, for putting this together. And hello to everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us. So I'm just gonna dive right in. This first poem is called The Minotaur's Daughter. A man cut out for slaughterhouse work. He'd come home invigorated, bellowing for meat. No meal complete without some blood or gravy smothered dish. Split-toed creature of excess, his bulk scrubbed porcine pink, smooth as a penis tip after his daily dip au jus. Hairy lord, trailing the stench of untold arenas and altars, lurid god of shambles and abattoirs, rabid disemboweler. Fresh viscera gleaming between steel watchband links and beneath nails thick as horns. At the table, he'd nudge me, daring me to eat. I thought it was an act of defiance to swallow something raw. At night, I dream him red-eyed, steerhead black as a butcher's heart. Bee-ringed nostrils exhale twin plumes of heat. Now my eyes avert. Breath comes short when I am in the presence of a beefcake, desiring heavy hooves in my back. Pin me beneath haunches thick and marbled. Shuddering, I deny my tastes. I run the hairpin turns. Slippery desires shoot. Recalling too late that I am a quarter goddess, a quarter cow, wholly his. Daughter, child, blood. Crescent crown and star hides beneath this sleek hair. I dream myself wielder of the spear, stunner, tanner, carrier of the bolt gun. Stripped to my barest components, I am left lowing in the pit, forced to drive alone the lions and after to dye the red linens before waving them again. My father, shame, gall, guts, am forced to surrender again and again, my throat, my heart, and everything below. I am his china shop. Okay, and now the next one is called Paper Wasps. Peak housewife era, when television taught that women were supposed to wear heels and a smile to vacuum, arrange doilies, make molded strawberry salad from a Good Housekeeping recipe. If you didn't like it, you still had to abide it. But she enjoyed laundry, even when she was young, bent over a zinc tub, scrubbing clothes out on a washboard alongside her own grandmother, who used to give her a glass of beer as they worked, later bouts of alcoholism notwithstanding. She always said she associated the scents of hops and brewer's yeast with her grandmother, and decades later, the washboard still hung on her kitchen wall. When she got her first electric machine, she still hung everything out to dry, lighter fabrics semi-transparent in the sun-drenched yard, aromatic with pepper and tomato plants. Her sundress, semi-transparent, as she turns, bends, lifts the fabrics to the line. She either didn't notice or didn't think anything of a wasp perched black and gold on the head of a clothespin, like the old absurdity about pinheads and dancing angels. Only this one was, at best, the avenging variety, and at worst, batting for the other team, with the infernal whine of its drained stained glass wings. The first sting white hot as judgment, and they just keep coming. The nest in the hollow metal post of the clothesline, gray honeycomb scarcely visible through the opening, and everything is light, 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 until she passes out. When she wakes, there will be ice packs for the swelling, baking soda pastes, her then husband with tweezers to pluck out the stingers that broke off in her skin. I was always amazed that she could go on after that, hanging her laundry out to dry right up until 1987, when her last husband left her, and her demons began to overrun her skull. Yet somehow she never stopped finding godliness in clean sheets, in the sense of bleach and fabric softener. These are the scents I associate with her. It took me a while to realize why her demons won. There was no joy in her life that they couldn't worm their way into, plant their insidious nest, and wait to swarm. Okay, this one is a little happier, and this one's called Male Nude. Late fall, twilight of the year. Young photographer plays host to her first nude subject. For a studio, her landlord lets her use an empty unit. She drags in blankets, chairs, cushions, a space heater, fusses with the arrangement. He's never posed before, so he brings his wife, who folds his clothes and holds them on her lap, smiles encouragingly. No sculptor would have coaxed this form from stony voids. Thin, bald, scarred, not much older than the photographer herself, but the survivor of untold medical catastrophes. Stretch marks cast violet shadows over moony flesh. November sunlight passes through a window as naked as he is, posed against the panes. She captures the way air seeps in through the gap in the sill, trailing goose flesh across his arms. She seeks points of perfection, the curve of his skull, the arch of his shoulder blade. Seated on the floor, limbs and spine align with the wood grain. Reclining on a fleece blanket, penis on thigh, Adonis after the boar's been at him, but before the goddess comes with her anemone tears. No money exchanges hands. There is no concern about the making of masterpieces, only the slow, careful steps of the novice, cultivating clarity, learning to connect her subject to the world, and him learning to be seen again, restored to the world, restored to his body. And then I thought I had to throw in a seasonal poem. This one's called Christmas Eve. Every Christmas Eve, we had dinner at my step-grandmother's house. She was old-fashioned. She didn't keep her TV in the living room. The living room was for visiting. So she kept her TV in the den, guests' coats collected on the sofa. I would retreat there after supper, after the gifts were open and the adults were gathered, talking and drinking coffee. I would bury myself under the heavy wool, the fur collars, the quilted parkas, the silk linings, the leather, the scarves, scents of perfume and cologne of cigarettes, a pack of Wrigley's in somebody's pocket. They would cling and mingle in my nostrils, the only light from the ceramic Christmas tree on the end table, the flickering 13-inch. I would drift off to sleep in their colors, lulled by the muted laughter from the other room, sleeping and waking to the celebration of divine birth, of life in a dead season. How am I doing on time?
7 minutes.
Okay, and this next one is Hanging Blood. You never know what you're capable of until you help your husband on and off the bedside commode because he's too weak to walk the 5 steps to the bathroom. Hold the bedpan for him. Flush the used toilet paper when he's through. You never knew. Wash your hands and go on. This is all an exchange of fluids. Mother's milk. Marriage ceremonies end on a note of saliva. Childhood friends rub the oozing skin under their scabs together, declaring fraternity for all time. Embalming fluid enters the body's chambers. The nurses call transfusions hanging blood. If I wasn't already struck by the power of fluids, I'd be bowled over by that naked terminology. Nothing can prepare you for the sight of those bags. You know blood is red. You know. But the spots left on cotton balls in phlebotomist's wake only hint. Valentine's Day red. Valentine's Day massacre red. The sight of them hypnotizes you, that red singing its way through the no color meant to be soothing taupes and mints and lilacs of the hospital wards, that dreamlike way it mixes, swirling and diffusing through the clear liquid in the tubes themselves, before entering the veins of the man I am bound to. The orderlies bring bowls of broth. There are sponge baths and oils, no ritual gone from the act of banishing the unclean. At night, I will unroll the cot next to your bed, while I will dream of the clinic across town, where donors whisper, "This is the cup of my blood," before they lie back and sip juice.
9 minutes.
Okay, and that's 9 minutes, so I think that's probably enough. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you so much. That was quite intense and quite wonderful. Our next reader, our last reader, is Jim Madigan, who is retired from public librarianship in February 2019 and went to Carlow College in Carlow, Ireland, to study the writing of poetry. He's currently enrolled in the master's program at the University of Illinois, Chicago for creative writing poetry. He's happy that he has become an active part of the poetry community around First Virtual. Jim is the father of 3 daughters and lives with his partner in Oak Park, Illinois.
Thank you, Robbie. I want to do a little shout out to Charlie Rossiter, who has 2 poems in the current issue of Verse Virtual. He is the person who introduced me to Verse Virtual. And I'm really grateful to you, Jim Lewis, for creating a community for poets. All the poems I'm going to read today have a theme, and this is an ecological theme. And the first one is entitled Red Tree. And I'm getting this in on the last couple days in autumn. I bicycled through town in mid-October. Green trees flanked the road ahead, except for one maple, flaming red, which stepped out of line off the parkway and began marching resolutely. All the other trees mobilized, verdant lines organized, wind-blown branches, fists in the air. Trees from other streets streamed behind. Serviceberry, redbud, birch and hackberry, accolade elm, black gum, crabapple, hickory. Shrubs and bushes fell in line. Overhead, the sky burst with birds. A riot of robins, quarrel of sparrows, scourge of starlings, and murder of crows. On the ground, small animals on 4 feet. All together, creating a cacophony of songs and slogans, shouts and chants, dances, lyrics and rants, urban nature striding towards a new horizon. And the next poem is called Fire Season. In the moonlight, it looked like gentle snowfall, powdered sugar streets and sidewalks. In Boulder, Longmont, Loveland, almost glowing. In the morning's close inspection, it looked like the downwind of a crematorium. Smart money says the West Coast will crisp before it quakes off into the Pacific. North along the Franciscan friar cities to Portland, there are now 5 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter, and fire season. Fire season sends its toxic ash on contrails over the Rockies. Visibility is a 1/4 mile. Adjust your goggles, protect your eyes. Airborne particles sting. Children cough, their eyes water, not enough to extinguish a blaze. The market moves to adapt. Fire season street celebrations, West Coast Mardi Gras, another masked celebration. The season will be over before we begin the next, Day of the Dead. Tomorrow relies upon the lodgepole pines and eastern cousins, jack and prickly pines. Nature, more adaptive than market, pine cones closed by resin, releasing seeds only after heated by a forest fire. The next poem is called The Narrows. I leave my friends with the throngs and walk towards the Narrows and select a deserted trail winding aside the Virgin River. Swordleaf spiked the banks, munching mule deer, 1, then 2, 3. Across the river, a coyote crouches to drink and turns to trot off. Another deer, then a velvet antlered buck, notices me but keeps on chewing box elder leaves. That night, as I viewed Sagittarius amidst the stunning array of stars, I could not help but think about the fragility of that trail. The river, the mule deer and coyote, I had driven many miles to hike that trail. And this is called Vampire Incorporated. Mist rises off Transylvanian moors. Clouds pass over the lunar orbs. The camera enters through a partially opened window on the upper floor of the castle. Shoulders bared, the virginal blonde beauty stirs in restless sleep. Suddenly, he appears. Cloak covering white tie tuxedo, his face obscured by shadows. Is it Bela Lugosi? Christopher Lee? Perhaps Klaus Kinski? He approaches. The room electrified with eroticism. She sighs. She shivers. Bed covers slip down, revealing her exposed neck and breasts. The vampire leans forward slightly. Incisors puncture her skin, drilling her heart. He sucks out blood and oil, inhales carbon dioxide, extracts her lungs and coal, intestines and uranium, heart and cobalt. He is never sated. This next one comes from a newspaper article in the New York Times. It's called Extinction. I will never hear the rhythmic drumming of the ivory-billed woodpecker. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services announced its addition to the extinction list. The ivory-billed woodpecker, which roamed 12 states, Illinois to Florida, was last seen in 1944. So the move from endangered to extinction was actually a bureaucratic move. As was the Bachman's warbler, a deep southern state resident that wintered in Cuba. I will never hear that warbler sing. Habitat loss, clear-cut forests, drained wetlands, poisoned waterways, expanding suburbs, poured concrete to connect to the cities, all contribute to the decline of species. Many animals portrayed in the ABC books are on the endangered list now. A is for apes, B is for blue whale, C is for California condor. Shall we keep saying the alphabet from endangered to extinction? I fear the last one dead will be a vulture. And my final poem is called Grand Canyon, Medium Rare. 2 weeks into a meatless diet, I drive Western Avenue in Chicago and notice a billboard. Look at that steak, cooked my way, bloody in the center. Deborah laughs and points out it was a sign encouraging visits to the Grand Canyon. 2 billion years geological history exposed by the Colorado River. Layers of rock, red, pink, brown. The river will cut through rock in 200 years, in 2,000 years. Will there be one of us left to look in wonder? Millions of cows belching methane, millions of acres of rainforest cleared for grazing, billions and billions of hamburgers sold. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jim. That was a powerful visual in that last poem of Grand Canyon as a big fat steak. All right, well, we have one person signed up for the open who has actually shown up. That was excellent readings. And Deborah Edelman is on the open, so she can read 2 poems or 5 minutes?
Actually, I am sorry about that. I was trying to register just to be a listener, and I think I clicked on the wrong link. So I've really enjoyed these readings. Love all your work.
How'd
But
you get in?
you know, I don't want to take up time for that. It was just a little confusing, and I think I clicked on where it said, if you want to read, click here, and then I never got notification to cancel it. So otherwise I would have. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's all right. You didn't have to cancel it. It's just that without the registration link, I didn't know how you got in. But
Yeah, there's 2 places in that email to join, and apparently I have joined them both, but I'm only going to be a listener this month. Wonderful reading. Thanks.
thank you. So would anyone else care to read 2 poems or 5 minutes, whichever comes first?
If you don't volunteer, you'll have to listen to me and Robbie.
Terry Malik, you want to read from a novel?
For 5 minutes?
I'll read if there's a spot.
Yeah, yes. Scott, let Scott read, and I'd like to hear from Terry's novel too.
You're muted, Terry.
You're muted.
Yeah, I guess that would help, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
All right. This is from my debut novel called The Bricklayer of Albany Park. I hope I can read this with such expression as Jim did. The local press dubbed him the Bricklayer. When I first joined the violent crime section of the Chicago Police Department, I played along and adopted the nicknames the press coined. That was 4 years ago, when I still had a wife and was able to sleep through the night. But over time, I came to realize the callousness of it, naming a serial killer as if he were one of the boats at Belmont Harbor or a family pet. The man I was tracking was, by all accounts, a monster, a brutal killer who had bludgeoned and mutilated middle-aged men, and then methodically buried them under piles of big bricks in the peaceful neighborhood of Chicago. I didn't know his real name, but for 7 nightmare-filled months, I studied him. When I wasn't interviewing construction workers and victims' families, I spent hours in the forensics lab. I stared at photos of his victims' empty chests, where he had left mementos for us. I wrapped myself in the blue tarps he had used as ritualistic shrouds, hoping their secrets would seep into my consciousness. Without donning evidence gloves, I sifted through construction debris and soil recovered from each crime scene, feeling what he felt as he scraped out hollow graves. My leather sofa was littered with dog-eared psychology textbooks and psychiatric journals. 2 red bricks from one of the crime scenes sat on my shower floor, where every morning I took in the distinctive odor of wet clay and sand. My dining room walls were papered with crime scene photos, a matrix of common elements of victimology, the latest Psych Bureau profile, pictures of each victim retrieved from family photo albums, and a city map peppered with red and green pushpins. During the day, I reconstructed the killings and the burials. At night, my dreams recreated the murders one by one until I jolted from my bed in a cold sweat. He was all I could think about. I knew him. I knew him almost as much as I know myself. That's it. If you want more,
Well, thank you. That's stirring at breakfast.
Terry, would you put information on where to find your book in the chat, please?
where do I do that? I'm sorry.
In the chat. Okay. in the center, should be center bottom, at
I
least it
see
is
it.
on.
I see it. Okay.
Okay, our next reader is Tresha Faye Hefner, I think. And then, so we'll bookend pieces of novel with poems.
And then Scott needs to have a shot.
Yes.
All right. Oh, thank you so much, Robbie, for hosting this. Yeah, well, I just want to make a very quick plug, if I may. I am the host of the Poetry Salon Online, and we have a poetry reading tomorrow at 2:00 California time. And if you would like to join us, I'm going to put a link in the chat to our online group, so you can join us there. That's totally free. You can hit me up on Facebook and I will send you the link to the reading tomorrow. Also, again, totally free. And we just love having new writers join us. So now that I've made that plug, I'll just read the one poem. The only thing you need to know about this is recently Jeff Bezos went to space, but he didn't stay there. And he said something beforehand about his motivation. He said, "I've heard that going to space changes you, and I want to see how it will change me." This is the poem. I understand, El Jefe. You're looking for something else. True, you already own history of a planet where people are hurried, unable to eke out enough notoriety to keep warm, while you spend yourself shooting rockets to nowhere. But I can't blame you. For the hungry we have with us always, but you are only temporary, small as a fever. Which of us hasn't spent too much on a purse at Bloomingdale's or food usefully imported from elsewhere? How can you resist the temptation to own a moment of this universe? I too have spent too much money this morning on a soursop fruit at the market, and yesterday a real pod of a cacao. And then I moved to Costa Rica. Shopping at the fruit stand, I saw a woman who looked like me reaching. A black rose tattoo bloomed across her whole shoulder, and that changed me in ways I can't describe. All of the moments are the same moment, the moment we become present. I let my old life die, and still I could go on living, starting over, like a flower stolen from a flower shop. Here is the inside of soursop. Here is the face of the entire universe. What will you do next, Jeff, now that you've seen the whole earth floating in front of you? What do any of us tiny gods do when we are no longer afraid to die? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tresha. Our next person now is it James, or who is going to read next piece of novel? I don't remember the name, so help me out, Lauren.
I think we got the novel reader. I thought Scott was going to read too.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember that Scott was going to read, but of course he may. But Jim, wasn't there another person with a piece of a novel?
I only saw Terry with the novel.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. All right, these are two about nursing. Sons. When I care for an elderly man in the hospital and the son comes to pick up his father, I see how the father's relationship with suffering and laughter and hope amidst pain has transmitted to the younger? Has he preached to the son, and did the son decide to digest the sermon or choose other gods? 85% of the time, the mythology remains unbroken. If the father pulls out the lions keeping him alive with disgust and frustration, the son will rail on about the traffic and the parking. If the father jokes about how the surgery for his bladder didn't make his manhood grow, as was promised, the son will confess that the surgery did not make his father mute, as was promised. But there are those sons who either have chewed on their own dark tobacco until it has blistered their fingers, or have drank from the shine of decent friends until they're buoyant. So I remember most times how to interact with my God in front of my daughter and now my son. I don't ever want to see them curse all the gifts in their hands. All right. Yeah, I'll do that one. Last close. Today I compressed a man's chest standing on a stool. They have already been trying to save this patient for 45 minutes when I am summoned to help because the compressors are getting tired. People look destroyed in the room. Pale skin glances downward, a confusion of blood, IV bags and lines and machines, with one sunken rack of bruises on the table in front of me. I begin pumping, keeping up 100 beats a minute. His chest has no more intact ribs, I am certain. But the code continues, and I have 2 minutes until the next pulse check. My scrub pants never want to stay up, and today is no exception. Now my pants slink halfway down my cheeks, and my crack enters the room like a joke at a funeral. I want so badly to yank up my pants, but I cannot. I want to call out to someone, anyone to lift them up for me, but I cannot. Then I think, is it more disrespectful to bare my ass in the service of this man, or to ask for assistance in the time of stoic duty? I choose to continue unabated. The next round, I pull them so high my socks show in their entirety. The man regains a pulse for about 2 minutes. There are scattered claps and muted cheers. Then the blood pressure drops again, and so does the pulse, and the code is stopped. This patient had no reason to die, just quit breathing under moderate sedation. The doctors walk ahead of me to tell the daughter. I gather the last clothes he wore in a plastic sack, wait for the doctors to say the words. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. You should put your new books into the chat so that people can read them and see more work, wonderful work like that you've been doing. You're just on fire.
Well,
okay, our next reader is the estimable Jim Lewis, our fearless leader.
I have to say, Scott, that is way too reminiscent of my years in hospital nursing. I did have the pleasure of never having entered the room like a joke at a funeral. I'm going to read a single poem written before our most recent round of rain, when we hadn't had any for so long it felt like we were never going to. And the title of the poem is Fat Rain. Ask the fishes massed in shrinking lakes. Ask them what their wish is, what it takes to give them elbow room. They answer, fat rain. Ask the firefighters robed in soot. Ask them what delights them, what would put their minds at ease. They answer, fat rain. Ask the struggling farmers planting seeds. Ask them what would bless them, suit their needs to make it through this drought. They answer, fat rain. Fat rain it is then. Rivers of rain, swirling, roiling, atmospheric rivers, wringing themselves out like a million mops over hills laid bare by fire. Lakes and streams run dry, reservoirs bled to nothing. Fat rain to free the fishes, fat rain to counter fire, fat rain to end this drought, fat rain to put it out, fat rain after such dry times, fat rain, fat rain, fat rain.
Amen to that. I will join the chorus or end up the reading, if that's okay with you folks. And there's no one else who's dying to read. I'm going to read a poem that makes sense after Jim's poem. It's called Hot, and it was published a few months ago. Hot. Yesterday, large birds, vultures and golden eagles, fell out of the sky in Arizona, stricken down by heat. I once held an eagle owl light on my arm, despite its impressive size. With all that armature alone, curved talons, beak like a scimitar, it should have weighed my arm down like a stone, and yet it didn't, barely enough to bow a branch. I learned that hollow feathers buoy the birds in flight, insulate in winter and in summer, shield the body, pink and diminished underneath all that striated plumage. Yet this architecture didn't help. What had been light fell like a sodden sandbag to the ground, breaking windshields, knocking grazing cattle to their knees. Think of the canaries miners use to carry caged into the dark. They tell us what's to come, but we know already from experience. Where hillsides dry to brittle brown, flames will rise like spirits, making their own weather, taking down the tallest trees. Frowning at the cloudless sky, we vow to change, and yet our lives continue as they always have. Morning shower, feeding the cat, checking the latest news. Imminent disaster cannot blunt the appetite or quell the thirst, keep the ants from finding the ripest peaches in the bowl. Routine won't help us when the very air ignites, when birds, the messengers that go before us, fall from the skies. Thanks. So that about wraps up today's reading, and we'll see you next month with, I don't remember who's reading or if I'd scheduled it yet, so you'll be hearing about it soon. See
Thank you,
next-
Robbie.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for the
Thank you so
beautiful
much.
reading, to the features and to the people at the open mic. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, thanks, everybody.
Thank
Take
you, all
care.
of you.
Bye.
Good to see everybody.
Hi.